The kinetoscope tube, as they term it, is fitted into the receiver. Now, this is the instrument that receives the electrical impulses and recreates the image. In other words, it takes the transmission and turns it into pictures, about 10,000 lines of light a second.
In every American home, in almost every living room, there are communications devices that connect us to the larger world. There are radios and televisions everywhere.
This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
Television, the drug of our nation, breeding ignorance and feeding radiation on television.
Television has been called the drug of the nation, and there's a reason for that. Programming can be addictive. For the most part, it's there to sell, not to tell.
This is beautiful.
Unlike other nations, our broadcasting system is almost totally dominated by commercial interests.
Other industrialized countries around the world have a history of using their broadcasting for public service. The United States never did. It was always seen as a commercial enterprise.
We think we're the audience for television programming. But in fact, a television outlet's primary relationship is really to their sponsor.
Commercialization and ratings pressure has led to sleaze, sensationalism, and dumbed-down programming. Americans are getting fed up, and a majority believes we deserve something better.
Broad as it may seem, you still have a feeling that there's very little on television to choose from.
Commercial television has been called a vast wasteland, but there is an oasis in this desert. A special not-for-profit place whose mission is to serve viewers, not sell to them. That's the idea of public television.
Hey, I wonder what's happening on Sesame Street today.
Public television. Who will do it, they ask, if not PBS?
Hey, everybody!
PBS may be great for kids, but what about public broadcasting for adults? Despite many fine programs, PBS is not living up to its great promise. In this video, we'll tell you why, where public broadcasting went wrong, and what we, as viewers, taxpayers, citizens, and members of the public, can do about it.
As chairman of the Carnegie Commission, he had proposed that the airwaves belong to the people, a proposal that now becomes law. With President Johnson's
This is President Lyndon Johnson in 1967, launching public television as an independent force in American life.
The Corporation of Public Broadcasting. It will be free and it will be independent and it will belong to all of our people.
LBJ's promises were based on a blueprint created by 15 prominent Americans who formed a Carnegie Commission that wanted a TV service to put public needs first.
The Carnegie Commission was created in 1967 as a result of a broad perceived need for an independent, non-commercial public broadcasting system.
That public broadcasting actually was initiated with a sense that it could really serve important purposes in a democratic society.
During the next hour, MET Realities will examine how the banks have paid special attention, to quote Mr. Rockefeller, to the needs of low-income Americans.
The original vision was a broad and democratic one. The mandate that created public broadcasting called for a forum for controversy and debate, and a voice for groups in the community that may otherwise be unheard, so that we can see America whole in all its diversity. Diverse public affairs was part of the mission.
The idea was we need television that will educate audiences, that will enlighten them, that will provide opportunities to air ideas and issues from across the spectrum, across the country.
Funding for this program was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Your help now is most critical, and here's more.
Americans rallied to support PBS with checks at pledge periods and with letters asking Congress to support its many excellent shows. Shows that dealt with the issues of the day, issues that commercial TV ignored. Programs like The Great American Dream Machine, a hard-hitting news magazine, reached millions of Americans.
The American dream, I guess a world where women can be aggressive without being considered masculine and men can be gentle without being considered effeminate.
It had a great deal of original talent, original drama, and a greater diversity of points of view. It was like a breath of fresh air on the airways, instead of the monotony and the monopoly that we're having now.
From the start, however, there was an unsolved problem that still haunts us today. Who should pay for public television? In many countries with strong public broadcasting services, they spend as much as $39 per person per year for quality television. In the U.S., as little as $1.
Carnegie Commission's original proposal suggested that there needed to be an independent funding source. And they suggested that without an independent funding source, public broadcasting would always be captive to the interests that were funding it. When the Congress deliberated upon and passed the Public Broadcasting Act in 1967, which President Johnson signed, there was no independent funding mechanism.
In America, the powerful private industries that use our public airwaves fought against giving back even a small slice of their profits for an enterprise to serve the public. The result is what we have today.
Barney and Friends was made possible by
KBKids.com, a new online toy store, is proud to support public television.
Chuck E. Cheese's proudly supports PBS Kids Television.
McDonald's is happy to support children's programming on 13.
A PBS system still scrambling for money, making compromises to please corporations and placate conservative politicians who falsely accuse it of having a liberal bias. The opposite is really the case. Today's PBS features business shows for the professional classes, but no labor, consumer, or environmental programs for the masses. It's too often predictable, and just as often bland and boring.
The schedule really hasn't changed in about 25 years. It's the same ongoing series that it's always been. It's business-oriented in a sense. There are 4 or 5 business shows dealing with consumer nature of business rather than the effect of business on the political, social culture. There's no ongoing series on labor. There's no ongoing series on women. There's no ongoing series with minorities, for example, and dealing with the social, cultural issues that exist in America today.
The invasion was swift, intense, and merciless.
If PBS considers a documentary too controversial, it won't put it on, even if it wins an Academy Award.
What exactly happened during the invasion of Panama?
Case in point, The Panama Deception, a film critical of the American invasion of Panama. It won many awards, but a timid PBS bureaucracy wouldn't air it.
PBS refused to show The Panama Deception because they said it didn't meet their standards of fairness. And the real problem here is that the people of this country have never seen an alternative analysis of why we invaded Panama and what happened during that invasion, other than what the major news and PBS told them.
Rights and Wrongs, Human Rights Television.
Case in point, the award-winning Rights and Wrongs Human Rights series, anchored by longtime PBS journalist Charlene Hunter Gault. PBS rejected it because, quote, human rights is an insufficient organizing principle for a TV series. Here are just a few of the many award-winning documentaries that the PBS National Program Service has declined to offer viewers like you.
When there were 3 or 4 shows and series had gay, lesbian themes when I was at the station, the right wing in Congress complained and threatened to withhold the funding from PBS. PBS did not pull the shows off the air, but there have been no shows that I know of with gay, lesbian themes since then on PBS.
Media monitors, like Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, have issued many detailed reports on the content biases of PBS programming.
Well, what we found in our studies of particularly the news and public affairs programs on public broadcasting is that the same voices are represented in that public broadcasting as we're also hearing in the commercial media. For example, we have a wealth of government officials appearing as sources in public broadcasting shows. Also, a lot of corporate representatives and a number of journalists Who's missing, we found over time, is a whole range of public interest constituencies.
Now there's a movement stirring to revitalize public broadcasting. Jerry Starr directs Citizens for Independent Public Broadcasting, with plans to mobilize the public to reform PBS. The campaign, launched at a Washington, D.C. press conference, was covered by C-SPAN, but not PBS.
We start with a very simple premise, and that is that the American people need and deserve space in our vast system of communications that is reserved for them as citizens and community members and taxpayers, not just as consumers. This would be space in which programs are not designed around product placements and commercial interruptions. Space in which program ideas are not driven by selling audiences to advertisers. Space in which minorities can be served without concern for ratings. If you recognize this description, it is precisely the mission envisioned for public broadcasting when it was founded.
Over the years, PBS has softened, become more conservative and commercial. Ratings rule, not program quality. Programs are often driven by funding needs instead of its public service mission.
ExxonMobil Masterpiece Theater is brought to you by a grant from the ExxonMobil Corporation.
Creeping commercialization, that is, what is changing is that Congress has not funded it fully enough to be able to be truly independent. And therefore, it depends on a variety of funding sources, and whoever pays the piper calls the tune.
You don't go to Dow Chemical and say we want to do a show on toxic waste. You do a show on something that you think they're going to approve of. So that's how self-censorship works. And it's also how corporate interests dictate the content of public broadcasting programming.
To make matters worse, PBS guidelines prohibit support from labor unions or public interest groups who would underwrite shows with other perspectives.
That the time has come to restructure the public broadcasting service as an independently funded public trust. This would take public broadcasting off the federal dole, remove corporate advertising, stop the desperate search for money, and free public broadcasting to pursue its mission without the constant threat of censorship, direct or indirect, at whatever level it occurs.
We have to set aside funding for a truly independent public broadcasting to promote the notion of democratic diversity.
The 1998 national poll found 80% public support for the idea that the media moguls, the commercial broadcasters, should subsidize a fund to provide quality programming in the public interest. Yet, special interests continue to press the government to give away publicly owned resources like the digital spectrum to private interests.
I think PBS should really be in a situation, in an environment where it is freed from getting sponsorship either from the federal government or from commercial sources, corporate sources.
The solution to this is a trust fund. The most important thing about it is it would remove governmental and corporate pressure on the programming and on the programmers.
Citizens for Independent Public Broadcasting is pushing for just such a trust fund, spelling it out in a recently published open letter to public broadcasters. It is a practical and viable proposal.
Make that call of support for your public television station. Please make a call.
For years, Americans responded when PBS stations asked for our money. Now it's time to ask them to reverse the descent into more and more commercialism and push for a fund to make public television independent and free of government and corporate control.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore!
The public has been mad as hell for years about television, but yelling about it won't help. Organizing will. You can help put the public back in public broadcasting, and you don't have to wait. Local PBS stations get federal funds to serve diverse communities. They need to hear from you.
So you can go to your local station or write to them and at a minimum give them some feedback on the programming that they're offering. They are, after all, meant to be serving the public interest and the community, and you're the community.
Citizens for Independent Public Broadcasting wants you to get involved. Visit our website and write for our training manual on how you can improve public broadcasting. Help us build a grassroots movement that can win. If we don't do it, who will? It's up to viewers like us.